think from the panelist perspective, we have the quorum. All right, I think we have hit the schedule time. So we're going to begin and we'll let others join in. But from the webinar perspective, we are ready to begin. So good morning, everyone. Welcome to the webinar on MRO Data Optimization Best Practices. Now, this being a knowledge sharing session, we have 3 of our esteemed customers agreeing to participate in the webinar, add their knowledge and colors to the webinar from their deep domain expertise. From the agenda standpoint, we would be looking at the next slide. Yeah. So from agenda standpoint, we would be looking at the why and when and how of MRO data optimization process being supported through MRO data cleansing. We'll have a couple of case studies where our customers would walk you through the observations, the best practices, the learnings from their experiences with Verdantis and through the entire data journey. What were the adoption and transition challenges? We also have on this call one of our partners from SAP implementation standpoint who would be providing the experts view on how companies should be looking at or corporate should be looking at managing the risk from these initiatives. Lastly, we have reserved about 15 minutes of this session from Q&A perspective. So we'll look at your queries, questions, and address those collectively as a group during those last 15 minutes. So let's start with an introduction. Steve, would you like to quickly introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Stephen Penley. I'm the manager of our Enterprise Master Data Management team. I'm responsible for our enterprise data management strategy, oversight of our team, as well as providing project management leadership for any data management implementation projects.
Thank you. Lisa?
Hi, I'm Lisa Tivey. I manage the Item Master Data Management Group within corporate procurement. I oversee the operational execution and any projects related to our centralized, enterprise-wide Item Master and pricing team. I've been with WestRock for about 6 years.
Thank you. Leon?
Yes, my name is Leon Scrivonic, and I'm with Haven Site Consulting Group, where I'm the plant maintenance lead for implementation and business optimization. We're an SAP partner focusing in mobility, plant maintenance, and MRO MRO storeroom spaces, where we work with a lot of companies across different stages of their ERP journey.
Thank you. And lastly, my name is Rohan Salvi. I'll be your host and moderator for this webinar. I've been with Verdantis for over 13 years now, and primarily focusing on material master data management with the use of technology. So with this, panel, I would like to set up context in terms of the webinar. You would be receiving a soft copy of the content that we present through the webinar, and feel free to drop any questions that you may have to the marketing group that we have on the webinar panelists, and they would be collating all the questions and we would be addressing those at the last 15 minutes of our session. So, just at high level, I'm going to focus on, keeping Verdantis parts to a brief, but, from a high level about the entire objective behind MRO data optimization. We see a lot of that coming, together during organizational mergers when enterprises are looking to combine their databases to find the collective potential savings. Process improvement initiatives where procurement is looking to, set up benefits out of their MRO material master data. And during ERP implementations, when organizations are migrating across ERP environments or upgrading their existing ERP environment to a later version. So in all these scenarios, there is an opportunity when it comes to MRO data optimization. And these are some of the challenges that we often face. As an MRO process owner, I think we all can relate to this. With technicians, with the planners coming to the owners asking for. I know that there is a material that exists in a system. I used it about 2 weeks ago, and today I'm not able to find that material in the database. And that's probably the difficulty in searching, where the system does not allow easy search capabilities. The descriptions, the data is unstructured or unstandardized. There are duplicate entries, which all collectively leads to high inventory costs. There could be obsolete items, which lead to search results being irrelevant for the end use. Difficulty in spend management, cross plant visibility, category management. All of these become a concern as we have unstructured data in the system, and this eventually leads to an overall lack of ownership of the process, and the data being dormant and across disparate distributed sources. It could be multiple systems, it could be a single system, but ultimately it does not really meet the end business objective. With this, we understand there could be opportunities that could come in, like making sure that duplicate materials, which is one of the key drivers for optimization goal, can be eliminated. Also ensuring that the data has a robust governance process, ensures an enterprise level visibility of your inventory. Make sure that you optimize on the inventory carrying cost and utilize the existing materials to the optimum level. Standardize the purchasing processes. Make sure that users do not end up ordering for items outside of the contracts that have been set up. Reduce the spot buys or maverick spend. Ensure that any stockouts are truly on account of items not being present in the inventory, rather than items not being searchable in the inventory. you know Making sure that the end user is empowered with smart cataloging process, which something like Amazon like interface, which allows the end user to search for their desired material through multiple methods for finding it. So from a solution perspective, it comes down to getting it clean and then keeping it clean. Now, with this, I'm going to transition this to Leon, who would walk us through his views in terms of the drivers and the methods for optimization.
Yes, thank you, Rohan. This is Leon. Give you a couple seconds here to look over this slide as to the when and why an MRO master data cleansing and governance project might be undertaken. What are the key drivers for it? What are the benefits that you're going to see? When it comes to the when and the why, in my experience, which has been across quite a few different industries, small businesses all the way up to some of the majors that you saw there in the intro slide, understanding that that sign on the door does not automatically imply some level of coordination on the other side of that door, right? Businesses all struggle with the same thing, material masters being one of those key objects, right? There's really two ways to look at how a company comes to embrace master data management and how you would utilize a solution such as the Harmonize and Integrity that Verdantis has to offer. In an ideal world, I think you make MDM a pillar of the project from the conception phase. It does add a level of complexity. Oftentimes companies don't really have the staff. They have to create the roles. They have to add the staff in order to have an MDM team. So it certainly changes your current business model. But when you get that one vision and that one team idea and utilize it across the disciplines, you can really see some fantastic gains in efficiency and effectiveness. Aside from that perfect example of, hey, we're going to implement an MDM team from the very beginning, I think more people find that this is more of an organic function, right? Businesses expand, And in that, processes maybe start to loosen. Tenured employees move on. A lot of the drivers that were able to make it work when it was small, it just gets bigger. And as that happens, you start to lose grasp maybe of your data, and you find yourself truly in a data nightmare. As an implementer of SAP, very heavy in the plant maintenance realm, I often say that the storeroom is the ultimate foundation in everything that happens from a maintenance perspective. Everything begins with that storeroom. If your storeroom's not right, none of the stuff is going to work as it should. So often businesses are not aware that the storeroom is the actual driver for many of these issues, and you find yourself with knee-jerk reactions, little projects and processes that start and stop, and it just leads to a great deal of frustration.
Yeah, and Leon, I think from the examples that you gave from as the industry expands or as an organization expands, we have had such experiences with our customers bringing their retirees members for data reviews during the cleansing initiatives, and we have seen people read a 20-character description and turn that into a 40-character description with 12 characteristics. So that's a lot of knowledge that has been collected over the years, and then that person retires. So
That
that
is very true.
discipline.
That's very true. There is a ton of tribal knowledge, legacy knowledge, and to add to what you just said there, one particular case, there was a material master description of valve, third cylinder, blue. And that was a qualified SAP material master. And somewhere out there in the plant, there was a guy who actually knew what that was and where it sat in the storeroom. But for everyone else, there was absolutely no value to it. That's what you want to get away from, obviously.
And I think Steve, with his journey from the data cleansing and then data governance perspective, would certainly be able to add a lot of color to this. So Steve, I'm going to turn on the next slide, which speaks about your experience in terms of the data journey.
Sure. Good morning. I'm going to walk you through our case. Just a little company background real quick. We are a Fortune 500 petroleum refining and marketing company, producing gasoline, diesel, lubricants, waxes. We are headquartered in Dallas, and we operate 6 refineries, 5 of them in the US and 1 in Canada. Our case was to create a consolidated global material master. We're migrating from 4 ERPs down to a single instance, and the data size that we started out with was roughly 400,000 SKUs. We did implement Harmonize for the data cleansing and integrity for the governance piece of this. So the cleansing approach, the duplicates were ID'd and removed. We standardized on a couple of taxonomies, the PIDEX and the UNSPSC, to produce the attributes and classified disparate, the classification, which produced standardized descriptions. This created our global material master, which gave us an enterprise-wide visibility to the items. We also had some Dutch-speaking counterparts, and Verdantis provided translations, Dutch to English and English to Dutch, and so that we were able to provide 2 sets of standardized descriptions in each language for them.
Yeah, and Steve, to this extent, actually, what was really made simple with the leadership team to begin with is there was a clear-cut foundation laid up that you want to keep to industry standards as a part of the process. There are not going to be many customizations that we want to introduce. UNSPSC, PIDEX, these are all global taxonomies, something that really works very well for oil and gas. Adoption of these taxonomies really drove the overall success.
That's correct.
Yeah. So from process perspective, I think you really explained the entire process earlier. We looked at the blueprinting and setting up the right team to begin with in the initiation stage, after which the taxonomies were applied to the entire data. Characteristics were identified from descriptions that the legacy catalogs carried, as well as from the manufacturer catalogs through technology use. And then from the output perspective, we had the standardized descriptions, duplicates identified, and overall user acceptance was also established before the output was delivered. So this translated to some of the real value KPIs, and I think you can talk to those as you move to the right hand side of the slide.
Correct. Yeah, so the outcomes of the project were very apparent. So we had reduced our material count by about 29%. About 15% of those were duplicates that were identified. We also had enrichment value add. So we were able to increase a certain number of SKUs by about 5 or 6% due to this web enrichment, and our attribute count was increased by about 12%.
Thank you.
And we did implement integrity. As I mentioned earlier, so the whole approach to this is the Harmonize is get it clean, and integrity is keep it clean, and we did do that. Integrity Lite was kind of our implementation, and we called it Lite because we did not implement every single bell and whistle that is included in the integrity product. This just fit our business case better, as it is an interim solution for us as well. But it did allow us to centralize the management of our global material. It's definitely prevented duplicates in our creation process, allowed us to govern this request process across the enterprise, manage our bulk imports, and there's a very powerful search engine embedded with integrity, which is key to allowing the user to search and see if that item does exist. It's got a lot of filtering and drill down capabilities to make sure that that item does or does not exist in the material master before it's requested or extended if it does exist. And there's also added a lot of governance and oversight and improved our workflow management.
Yeah, and from search capability perspective, I think what really impacts the end users is having a potential capability of a Google-like search, which is more designed towards MRO space, rather than being a Google. It has to be also incorporating the MRO descriptions and approach of how users enter the descriptions. That becomes important from any software solution perspective, where we are looking to find the right materials at the right time. So these are a couple of performance KPIs.
Yes. So as you can see on the left-hand side, the materials present. December to March, we were in kind of a tech go live. We were piloting one site, and once we did a business go live and incorporated all the sites, it kind of jumped up pretty substantially there and is maintained pretty level as far as materials in the item master. And then our request process, you can see it kind of jumped up there in February, March timeframe, and that big spike there in the summer was due to some bulk imports that we were using for enrichment data that we had done some validations on. And after that, kind of dropped down and it's rebounded and kind of up and down, but pretty steady overall.
Yeah, I see. There is a best practice over here as well. Instead of just simply carrying forward the enrichment data, you ran a validation process over there to make sure that we are not introducing inaccuracies on specifically to items that have been engineered specific to your requirements, where the manufacturer catalogs may not truly represent the items. So that was an important step.
Yes. And just to kind of elaborate on that, yes, that when we did that on the stock items, so the enrichment data that was provided, each plant actually went in and looked at that item on the storeroom shelf to make sure that the attributes aligned. Then there was new labels that were created for that, but it was also a safety thing. So we needed to make sure that we were not putting any type of description out there, maybe that had some erroneous information from a safety perspective as well.
Great. Yeah.
So the bulk import record, just kind of that big, you see that big spike or a couple of spikes there, and they're once again related to the validation of the enrichment data and those uploads.
And Steve, I believe all of these updates were managed, with the use of, the templates of the system without having to create any custom processes, just simply importing the data in Excel files through, the data
Yes,
stream, right?
yes, that's correct. Utilizing the integrity functions. So a couple of, just kind of walk you through this slide for the best practices that we found for our particular project. So just number one, I think, is probably the most important as far as creating the material master. It was involving the users to obtain the buy-in to the technology and the process. This is a brand new shift, and it was a huge change management effort. So involving them early and often was key, selling them on the benefits and why we're doing this and how it's going to make their lives easier is key. And then also having the subject matter experts in the room to tell us if it's a duplicate and to validate that the descriptions are correct. These are the end users. These are the people in the plant that they have day jobs that is way outside of this realm. But we did want to get a little bit of their time to actually sit down with us and get through this to make sure that we had a high quality output at the end. These are the planners, the people in the plant actually working with the products and the buyers, those type of people. Next thing was, once we got it clean, to keep it clean. That was another thing. There'd be no benefit to of having undertaken this project to consolidate it and dedupe it and get all these great standardized descriptions, attributes, classified data and all that. If we weren't able to keep it clean, it would just been a mess, within months. My experience, as soon as you kind of do this, if you don't govern it, you're going to just start creating a problem once again. So integrity has been great for us from a management and governance perspective. It will prevent those duplicates and it provides a standardized process as well. We're also able to centralize the process, which has given us a lot of control and oversight by having a standardized request and approval process. Before it was just kind of everybody did their own thing, and which led us to the issue at hand that we went out to solve. And I'm also employing reviews with the native speakers, the Dutch, to make sure that the translations were accurate that were provided by Verdantis, to make sure that it met their needs was a big key as well. Any questions for me?
I think we are good. And
all right, thank you.
At this stage, I'm going to hand it over to Lisa to help us through her journey. I think enterprise-wide integrity implementation, and a volume of over 1 million. So, Lisa.
Thanks. Good morning. So WestRock, for those of you who don't know, it's a global paper and packaging company with operations and expertise in every shopping category. We have more than 300 facilities around the world, and we have currently about 1 million items within integrity. Our initial integration was from 2 ERPs, and now all of our MRO and all of their data are consolidated within integrity. That is our material master. Next slide, please. Okay, so within corporate procurement, our master data team manages the item master. We utilize the data governance rules within integrity to ensure that only quality data is submitted and approved. I have a team of 3 people that manage our global item master. We have over 1,000 users. However, on a monthly basis, we have about 450 active users who submit requests for new item creates, extends, or edits. And these requests come from those 300 facilities. I mean, all of our requests originate out at the plants. So they are the users of the data. They know the data. They hold it in their hand, and they're able to set it up successfully with all the requirements. So we currently manage over 1 million records, as I mentioned. Primarily, we're in North America. We have Canada, of course, well, the US and Canada, but we also have plants in England, Germany, and Spain. We also utilize about 25 approval workflows, and a workflow is how we control how that request is routed for approval. So depending upon the type of item, or and the different approvals for the different type of plants we have, you can set up different approval routings. We've improved our first pass success rate. When we first stood up Integrity, it was about 30%. So by the time it would come to the master data team, we had a lot of instances where we had to return the data back out to the field because it didn't have everything we needed, or they would submit, maybe instead of a manufacturer name and part number, they were putting supplier name, or they were putting a trademark. So we did an internal project where we actually added an attachment for the manufacturer name and part number. So maybe it's a order acknowledgement, or it's even just a link to to the website showing that part. But by implementing that, though, we have increased our first time pass rate to now 70% when it comes in. So that has saved us just a ton of time. Integrity provides, enhanced search capabilities. So really it provides a great user experience. There's so many different ways you can search for items. So if somebody chooses to, search by a manufacturer name or part number, or maybe just a word within the description, or maybe they want to search by a category, there's just, all sorts of ways for searching. We also implemented some limited multilingual capabilities, primarily French Canadian, because they have rules and regulations there where the French Canadian has to print on the POs. So we were able to implement what they needed in order to come on to Integrity as well. And our current SLA is 24 to 48 hours from the time it enters the master data queue. We're consistently under 24 hours in our turnaround time. So we've made huge improvements over the years since coming on to Integrity. We were, I think, 48 to 72 hours, but now we're consistently under 24 hours.
And Lisa, I understand that was quite a lot actually to cover in one single slide. Just adding to that, from the three core users that you have from data stewards perspective, I think you told us how you had ensured that you have the right skill sets covered in the data stewards who are managing a total volume of 1 million plus materials. So maybe you can quickly talk to those.
Yeah, sure. We have we have a team of 3, and they all bring a little different skill set to the group. We have one person who concentrates primarily on the Integrity queue, so all the items coming into the queue. We have another one who has 35 years of experience in the manufacturing, so he is our go-to expert on anything parts. He does a lot of the edits, so if people are sending in edit requests, he researches those. He manages a lot of the questions that come into our shared inbox. And so, but also can help out with the queue as well. And then we have someone on the team who has more of a technical background. So she handles a lot of the, bulk imports. She manages a lot of the reference masters in the background, handles a little bit more of the complex type issues. However, I say complex, but they're not as too complex that there's other people on the team who can do all that. It's just that she focuses on that part of it. So they all have their day-to-day, but they all can cross over and assist with any of the questions that come up. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. Great. Thanks, Lisa.
Sure.
Yeah. So let me take us to the next one. Okay. Yeah, I think these are
these are just some trends. So our total requests. So we had a spike in 2019. we had an acquisition with some mills and plants. So obviously the number of requests coming in had an uptick there. And as you can also see, the number of records in the system, we consistently are on the increase, hopefully a little slower now. So we're not getting too many more items, but we continue to get new items during acquisitions. It's always a challenge to rush and put the data in. So we do try to find as many existing items as we can that we can extend versus creating brand new. Okay, next slide. And this is just for bulk imports. So, when we have an acquisition, everyone's in a rush for you to get the data in. And so sometimes the data you're entering isn't as clean as you would like it to be. So we had the initial hurry up, get everything in. And then we went back and through the bulk imports, we edited that data and we're able to get the corrections in bulk imports rather than one item at a time. So huge time saver to do the bulk imports to make any edits to the items.
Perfect.
Okay, and then the last, this is just a trend. So this is our 12-month rolling. The shaded green is our SLA, which is the 24 to 48 hours. The blue and the bars are our creates, edits, and extends on a monthly basis. And the lines are our approval times, how much time it takes us. So, so you can see we're consistently under that 24 hours. It just shows a trend. We're pretty steady on the number of items created during a given month, assuming there's no acquisitions that we're loading data in or new plants coming on.
Sure. Cool. With this, I think, from customer case perspective, we are going to, now transition over to, what are the typical transition and adoption challenges that could be, seen during such implementations. Of course, the major challenge, as is the case with most of the project management initiatives, are, the change management. Effective change management over here is going to be key to this. So there are two types of changes that are going to occur as the journey of data begins. We have a system that is going to be new to the users, technicians, the planners who are, used to a particular system for requesting items, adding the items to the system. So in a way that they need to be, assured that this is a easy enough to use system as compared to the previous system. Often we see a complaint that I've been using this system for last 15 years and now you're expecting me to change. So making sure that the value add that the system drives is understood well in advance before it goes out. Make sure that we have the right set of people in the user acceptance testing environment where they approve the changes that have come through. Make sure that those changes can be absorbed seamlessly into the existing business processes, and if effectively the entire system works. In addition to that, the second aspect is the data. So making sure that the data which is undergoing a change also is approved by the key business users. So from data review perspective, we need to involve the right users at the right time to make sure that we don't have any rework in terms of the data. We don't have any friction in terms of how that data is going to read to one department and then how it is going to be perceived by the next department in the process. So that becomes a key, making sure that we have the right resources reviewing the items. Also, an important aspect over here is to make sure that the resources are balanced off internally, because these are resources that are coming from plants. So now someone needs to do the other day job which they were carrying out on day-to-day basis. So this data review is not their day-to-day job. They have their own job to perform as well, and in case that responsibility starts suffering, there is going to be a major deviation from data review. So this also needs to be managed as a part of the change management process. Now, we have seen initiatives where at the end of the cleansing, the duplicates are identified and sent back as a part of the output. Now we have about 10-15% duplicates, and at that time it becomes overwhelming to review those duplicates and eliminate those from the system. So in terms of any data piece that requires detailed validation process, it becomes important to have that identified upfront, segregate it over the duration of the cleansing, make sure that your duplicates are resolved beforehand, so that when you are ready to go live, you have those taken out and you have already realized some part of your data optimization goals. And this is somewhere, I believe Steve's team did an excellent job. If I recall that implementation, I've been with Steve, Leon, and Lisa through their implementations, with fairly detailed review of what they were doing throughout the stages. And Steve's team really did a very good, applied a very good strategy when it came to duplicate management, eliminating almost 15% duplicates prior to the go live itself. When it came to cryptic data, now these could be the items, and I think most of us can relate to this. This could be OEM items, it's just a O-ring with the part number, and there is going to be very little that can be done about it, because OEMs are going to be benefited by giving the limited information, so that you go back to the OEM and purchase it from them instead of purchasing from whoever is the true manufacturer of that O-ring. Now, that O-ring, even though it is a small item, we may not want to, measure it and identify the specifications. But at the end of the day, there could be 100 exactly same O-rings that are lying in our, material master and being duplicated. So data collection workshops for such cryptic data becomes important. Managing these unusable cryptic descriptions is another key, where if you find that the description is completely unusable, let's eliminate the item. If it is not stocked, if it is stocked, let's improve the description. And if it is a non-stocked item, whenever that item is required in future, someone in the system who has the governance process set up will ensure that we have the right description coming in as a new item request, so that the cryptic descriptions issue is resolved fairly quickly. Now, outside of this, there is another important transition and adoption challenge that many organizations face, and that is primarily the turnaround time on the data, or the data cleansing. So, Leon, I think this is where you could add to this.
Yeah, the process with Verdantis is very clearly laid out in advance. Please understand that on your side, on the business side, there have to be dedicated users. Stephen mentioned earlier that these people have other jobs, full-time jobs, but getting that process, getting into the flow of the back and forth is very important. It's certainly worth the time. It's certainly worth the effort. There's a couple different ways of, how might you go about implementing the data? Do you want to go with a big bang approach? Do you want to slide it in, a couple pieces at a time? I can tell you this, as the consultant on a project, you'd have to make a pretty good argument to not go with the big bang approach, in my opinion. Just as the contingency plans and the temporary processes that you would probably have to implement would be probably more trouble than they're worth. There are a few caveats, as Rohan already mentioned, OEM parts. Maybe you've got a couple material masters that require extensive validations or just a lot more work than others. You can make contingency plans for those, but
Mhm.
my thought is certainly big bang approach.
And to add to that, Leon, I think what really matters is these initiatives, from an ERP standpoint, require vision from the leadership, support from leadership. You want to make sure that we have the entire project turned around within the planned duration. So the scalability of a software solution, or whatever solution is adopted for this cleansing really matters, because the turnaround time, a quick turnaround time on the process ensures that the data is set up in the right format, in the right structure, in a timely bound fashion, so that it can support the end ERP implementation goal. data should be ready before you're ready to go live.
I certainly agree there. As a PM implementer, bills of materials, equipment bills of materials are something that always is in the project scope at the beginning. And it's one of those things that just, well, we don't have them. We can't get them. We're waiting on the material masters. So that's a perfect example of how using Verdantis, using them early, getting the data in, you're able to get the bombs in by the time that you're ready to go live. It's better for the customer. It's better as an implementer, certainly.
Cool. I think this is where we transition towards what are the main drivers towards making a decision on uh, material master data management.
Yeah, so I'll give everyone a second to look over the slide here. I can tell you on a personal note, I came to work with Verdantis for the first time at Hess. I can also say that after 3 or 4 weeks of working with them, there were many folks that thought I was an employee of Verdantis for how I was singing the praises. They thought I was a spy, perhaps, but seeing the usability, seeing how the process worked, and really having a good understanding of the touch points between MM and PM, even in the PP space, um, where it bogs you down. Just the incredible number of man hours and dollars wasted by not going with a system like this. Very, very frustrating to be a part of, especially when you can see the answer there. So it's great when the project is done and you're starting to see the benefits of it. Um, I can say there at Hess, the state of our material masters, it was something that you tried to keep out of every meeting, but it always somehow knocked on the door and got into the meeting somehow. It really was a frustrating time. From an implementation standpoint, as a consultant, I find all the time that groups and businesses are a little bit unaware of the full impact that their material master issues cause. You know, how does it affect the day in the life of a maintenance technician and your storeroom employees? What does that mean as it pertains to downtime? You know, production out the door. And it truly is a snowball. If you can stop it early, it never actually gets to the full-on avalanche type idea. And of course, SAP, if you are an SAP shop, the material masters drive a ton of functionality and a ton of reporting. SAP is very, very good at making things difficult for you if you're not using it the way that they want you to. And I think the material masters and its effectiveness and their effectiveness is probably one of the ways that SAP works its best. You know, when you bring in things like MRP, budgeting, uh, projects, capitals, etc.
Mhm.
Next.
All right. I think we are going to throw it open for any question and answers. I believe there were a few that were sent to me, ahead of time. Okay, let me go through those one by one. So I think the first one that I have is, which are the domains or industry verticals that, the solutions really cater to. So if I have to relate to the domains, we have been, looking at multiple domains, but our, majority of, I would say, implementations have been from oil and gas, utility sector, packaging products, food and beverage, pipe valves, fittings. So these are some of the, I would say, top count domains for Verdantis. But primarily the MRO space has a lot of overlap. So whether it is an industry that caters to I would say, for an example, we had a discussion about containers today. So someone who is manufacturing a container versus someone who is going to be manufacturing food products. So a lot of MRO is going to be common. There are of course going to be specialty items, but majority of the MRO, majority of the categories are going to remain common across the process and manufacturing industry. Let me move to the next one. I think, yeah, I see this one, Big Bang versus, phased approach. Leon already answered that one. Next is about, from governance standpoint, what are the roles that can be configured. Now it really depends on the workflow requirements. So depending on the workflow requirements, the roles in the systems can be configured, like from the requester perspective. We can have a requester level user who is going to be responsible to search, find materials, and it could even get down to a role which is going to be of the stewardship role, who would receive those requests and approve those requests. Now we may want to add additional reviewers in the process that include quality certification, the safety department, making sure that each request that progresses can be approved through the appropriate enterprise reviewers before the material is set up in the system. Now, moving ahead from the role requirements to, I think the next one is multilingual capabilities. I think this is a very interesting one, because what I understand from here is once the data has been set up in multilingual or multiple languages, how do we carry forward these items ahead and make sure that they remain structured, standardized, in the future? So from this perspective, yes, we do have governance solutions. Integrity supports almost 26 different languages. From the governance perspective, users who are logging in as a Spanish user will see the data in Spanish. They can create the item in Spanish, and then when this item goes to the data steward or master data manager, this might appear in English, because English might be the language that is selected by the master data manager. So the system has the capability of live translation, making sure that the multiple languages are maintained and are available for the users to search by. I see another one is so I think this was interesting. How does one onboard additional materials post system go live? So bulk data management, I believe does this require any customized scripts? So so in terms of the data management post go live, as Lisa mentioned earlier, this can be done through the bulk management modules of the governance solution. It can be through simple Excel based imports into the database. So that really helps towards making sure that there are no custom programs required. People who are already familiar with the system can create the materials in bulk through the system itself. Now, moving into the next set of questions, let me look at it. So I see, what are the key drivers for business impact contributing to the business case? Excellent. So, so over here, what is, important is to understand that this is towards operational efficiency. The end goal is to achieve operational efficiency, and that can be pretty much, basically, captured in terms of the business case. Verdantis, certainly can help you drive that business case when it comes to, identifying duplicates. So there is one component where if you have dormant materials lying in your inventory, you want to reduce spend against that. Any item that you're not spending is equivalent to saving, and more capital that can be invested into other business objectives. In addition to that, making sure that the plant users are able to find the right parts at the right time ensures that there is minimum downtimes. The planning happens efficiently. A simple downtime of the plant can be equivalent to $50,000 per hour, depending on what size and what type of industry you're in. So these are some of the drivers that help us drive towards a business case to deliver.
I certainly would like to add to that a little bit. And yes, it's inventory value. You'll hear folks say, well, we need to reduce inventory. We need to increase inventory. Well, do you really know what you have? And then what do you have compared to what you need? Without a good material master repository, you can never really get good answers there. But the amount of obsolescence, the amount of dead inventory, inventory that can't be found, that can't be identified, all of that is money that you can't spend on what you need to be spending. Huge business driver.
Makes sense. Perfect. I do have a couple of additional questions that came in as well. So what is the percentage of enrichment in oil and gas industry? Now, from enrichment perspective, I believe we are exactly referring to, enriching based on the catalogs, using the technology methods, where, autocrawl is the engine that helps from Verdantis standpoint. So over here, from oil and gas industry perspective, the enrichment is actually dependent on availability of manufacturer names and part numbers. So if we have a database that is rich enough in manufacturer name and part numbers, all the entries that have a manufacturer name and part number can be enriched. And from typical value proposition perspective, depending on how mature your data is, if you have an item that already has 12 different characteristic values, then we don't want to enrich that item because it's already at a level of procurement success rate. But if an item is missing characteristic values, definitely we would want to enrich that. And based on our experience, we understand that 20% stands as that optimum ROI number, where if you attempt for 20% enrichment, you're going to get maximum benefits from the enrichment process, because then we would be able to focus on items that require enrichment rather than enriching items that already have decent descriptions. So that was about enrichment. That does not mean that enrichment cannot go to 70%. We recently had an implementation from the telecommunication industry that had a 70% enrichment success rate. So 70% of the items from that database was enriched. Next is, I see, I believe there is a question. Lisa referred to first pass success rate. What does that exactly mean? Lisa, do you want to take that one?
Sure, absolutely. So when I refer to first pass success rate, so, when the request, so the master data team is the very last point of approval before that item is created within integrity. So that's my team. So when I say first pass success rate, meaning the item's been approved out in the field, so it's gone through the different approval routings, it comes to us and it passes the first time. We can successfully submit the item for creation and integration into our ERP system. Also meaning you don't have to reject the item, right? If the item comes in with some bad data or questionable data, sometimes we reject it and send it back, or other times we may just call or email the requester so that we can save the time on that back and forth within the system. So when I refer to first pass success rate, it means it's come into master data, it's perfect, we approve it, submit it, and it integrates into our ERP system. Does that answer? Hopefully that answers the question.
Yep. Yes, Lisa. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay.
And there's one more. I think I'm currently looking for some clarity on this. If we onboard with defined roles, then kindly detail where we need to have role of integrity other than any change in rules. I think we need some clarity on this question. If you can resubmit that question, I can revisit this one. Okay, let me see. Which language is easy to do automation? More data like MySQL, data standardization. Okay. So I think there is a question regarding the programming language, which I may not be able to answer, not having the technical background from that perspective, but we will definitely address this subsequent to this session. We have the email address of everyone, so we'll definitely revert as a follow-up response to the question.
This is Leon. I'd like to go ahead and maybe take a quick stab at the question. If we onboard with defined roles, then kindly detail where we need to have role of integrity. So I guess the way that I read that is, if we harmonize, why do we need integrity? That's and if I'm wrong in this, please forgive me. But understand that as new requests come in, that role of integrity is to oversee. It sits on top of your ERP, provides the rules, according to the scripts that you set up. And then someone in that role will say, yes, I approve of these, because there are ways that you can try to game the system. You know, just as anywhere you work, I might create a characteristic value that's maybe a little fraudulent, right? In order to get my material master created, because I don't want to do the research to have a legitimate one set up. So that there are reasons for having that integrity role there after you've done the harmonization. And that's my take on that. And if that's the wrong, and if I'm answering the wrong question, please forgive me.
No, I think Leon, thanks very much for covering that up, because I had slightly misunderstood the question. I think if you're looking from integrity perspective post harmonization, we understand, as you mentioned, the data has been cleaned, but for future purpose, we want to drive those rules in the material creation process. Okay, so what happens is, in this scenario, is all the engines that drive the cleansing initiative are then modeled into integrity, ensuring that anyone who is capturing a catalog description and trying to set up a new material gets classified into the exact same category that rest of the data lies in. Make sure that has the same set of specifications, the description generation, ID, OD, width, if it is a bearing, if it is a motor, then horsepower rating, followed by the number of phases, followed by the frame size, RPM. All these details continue to remain the same to ensure that the description that is generated is exactly similar to the ones that are generated for that entire category. This ensures that there is a guided procurement in place, so that a user who is trying to search for those items finds those items in the first attempt itself. In case he's not able to find it using the simple search method, then he can filter for the category, get down to the parametric search, which you see in, I would say, your e-market portals like Amazon, or any other, where you can filter by the characteristics. So let's say if I'm searching for a hard disk, I can filter by the capacity of hard disk. I can filter by the type of the hard disk, whether it is HDD, HDD. I can filter by the color of the hard disk. So these are the characteristics that the user can then filter out by and arrive at the material that he's looking for. So that's for having these details in place, we need to have the governance process in place for any materials that are being created post the initial harmonization. Perfect. There is room for one more question. We have about 3 minutes left. Are there any other questions? Okay, I think at this time we are all covered from questions perspective. In case anyone's question was not resolved through the session, we would definitely respond to you offline over an email for your question and its appropriate response. We appreciate everyone joining in. Steve, Lisa, Leon, thank you very much for your participation in this session. We certainly appreciate the time and effort that you have taken towards this knowledge sharing session, and we look forward to similar more sessions in future, as we can drive further value to the end users.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you all. Bye
Thank
now.
you.
Thank you.
Cheers.